Black in Lorwyn Eclipsed is not flashy. It's trying to be efficient. It's willing to trade life, creatures, and its resources without hesitation because Black plans to just come out ahead no matter the cost. This color, it's about inevitability, removal that actually wants to kill things, graveyard value that keeps coming back, and pressure that doesn't let opponents breathe. Black doesn't care if the board gets messy. It likes messy, honestly. The longer the game goes, the more Black turns scraps into wins. If your opponent feels like every trade favors you and every answer costs them something, that's Black doing exactly what it's supposed to do. Let's break down what Black is really offering in Lorwyn Eclipse and which cards actually matter. All right, first up, diving right into the one drops, we've got Bile Vile Bogart. For one black, we get a 1/1 Goblin Assassin. When this creature dies, put a -1/-1 counter on up to one target creature. Super important that a lot of these other -1/-1 things with the Blight targets you, but in this case, we can put it on a target creature. And obviously, one of the best things about this is the Goblin subtype because it is a very common, very beloved creature type in Magic. So super excited to see some more goblins, obviously. And then we have Dawn Hand Dissident. For one black. We get a 1/2 elf warlock. Again, elves are very popular. People love them. This one's really cool. It's similar to another card we've seen before in one of the other colors, but we get to tap it. We can blight one in order to surveil one. Again, to surveil, you can look at the top card of your library and you can choose to put it in the graveyard or you can leave it on top of the library. And then we can also tap and blight two to exile a target card from a graveyard. Some graveyard hate. We love that. So we get some versatility here. We can filter through our cards to kind of help with our draws. And we can target cards from graveyards. I think that this is going to be pretty decent in, you know, standard and constructed for sure, because so many things care about the graveyard. So being able to target things as a 1 mana and that second turn, you can actually do this. Really important that the Blight 2 can target itself. It will kill it, but you can also exile that card. So it's something nice to do with this card if you just need it. And it says, during your turn, you may cast creature spells from among cards you own exiled with this creature by removing 3 counters from among creatures you control in addition to paying their other costs. So again, really getting to use those blight counters and by being able to remove those in order to do some additional stuff. I'm actually a fan of this. I think this is a pretty solid one drop. Of the Bogart and the Dissident, I definitely am a bigger fan of the Dissident. Again, I like the versatility here. I do like the idea that the Bio Bogart is able to, kill something, because if you swing into something, they block it with a 2/2. You can give it the -1/-1 on that target creature which blocked this, and it's going to be dead because its toughness is 0 after this is all said and done. So I do like these two cards. I think they're some of my favorite one drops that we've seen so far, but I do like the Dissident a little bit more than the Bogart. We have Moon Shadow for one black. We get a creature that has 7/7 printed on it. It's an elemental with menace. This creature enters with 6 -1/-1 counters on it. So I do think it's important that you are getting off the bat a 1/1 for 1. So nothing too crazy, but it does have menace, so it is a good way to sneak some damage in. Whenever one or more permanent cards are put into your graveyard from anywhere while this creature has a -1/-1 counter on it, remove a -1/-1 counter from this creature. It is super important to remember that if you have 7 things that all resolve at the same time, it does not cause multiple of these counters to be removed. They do need to resolve individually. So if you surveil one and then that card goes to your graveyard, you would remove a counter. And then later on, if you go into combat and you actually have something die and it goes to the graveyard, you would remove another -1/-1 counter. However, if you swing in with a bunch of tokens thinking that when 4 or 5 of them go to the graveyard. You're going to get to remove 4 or 5 counters from this. That is not how this will work. But this is by far my favorite one drop. Pretty much, I really like the versatility here. I do think it pairs well with some of the other cards, especially if you're like doing black white. I think that this is a cool card to pair with Reese in white. It's a 2 drop that when you do activate its ability, you can remove any number of counters from a creature. So, going turn 1 Moon Shadow into turn 2 Reese, and then turn 3 getting to actually use Reese's ability to remove all these instead of playing a creature. I do like the ability because you're getting a 7/7 on turn 3. Who doesn't like that? It is a far cry of hope here as well. Plus, elementals are kind of interspersed throughout the entire set. We have Mud Button Curse Tosser. For 1 black, we get a 2/1 Goblin Warlock. As an additional cost to cast a spell, behold a goblin or pay 2. Again, we've seen this behold in other colors, but to behold it, you would need to choose a goblin you control or reveal a goblin card from your hand. This creature can't block. When this creature dies, destroy target creature an opponent controls with power 2 or less. Again, another great 1 drop. Getting it's very efficient. You're getting a lot out of it. Now, the pay trade-off here is you can't block with it, right? So it makes it a little bit not the best. However, I don't see a lot of cases where realistically you're gonna want to trade off this by blocking with it. It could be possible, but I don't see a lot of instances where you're going to want to, because they have to basically willingly give up a creature, most likely 2 early game, because 2/1, this is going to trade up with a lot of 2 drops because a lot of 2 drops are 2/2. So you're generally going to trade off unless they're playing a 1/3. And they have to give up a secondary creature because even if they have a 1 drop that's a 1/1 on the field, they're basically going to block this, their 2/2 dies, and then you're going to target their 1/1 or another 2/2 and kill it as well. Or maybe they have a 3 drop that's a 2/3. Well, cool. It has power 2 or less. So because that power level's 2, I'm going to target it. I'm going to kill it. So you've killed a 2/3 as well. They're 3 drop. So you've really just hindered their curve and really put a damper on any sort of plan that they might be trying to get together. I'm a huge fan of this card. Continuing on with the 1 drops, we got Requiting Hex. 1 black, get an instant. As an additional cost to cast a spell, you may blight 1. You may put a -1/-1 counter on a creature you control. Destroy target creature with mana value 2 or less. If the spell's additional cost was paid, you gain 2 life. So I really think that this is great, right? Especially if you can pair this up with the previous 1 drop, that Mud Button Curse Tosser. I think that it's a really great little combo you can do here, because what you can do is you can play the Mud Tosser and then uh, hit it with Requiting Hex, give it the -1/-1 to it. That creature allows you to then destroy target creature an opponent controls power 2 or less. So, any decks that are trying to go wide with these small creatures, cool, you got one there. And then because you blighted 1 on it, that creature killed 1. And then now this instant gets to destroy a target creature with mana value 2 or less. If the spell's additional cost was paid, you then gain 2 life. So you got to kill 2 creatures and you gain 2 life. I think that this is a really cool little way to use the blight and actually get a nice amount of removal as black. I think it's a super great way to do this. We then have Scar Blades Malice. For 1 black. We have another instant, and it's target creature you control gains Death Touch and Lifelink until end of turn. When that creature dies this turn, create a 2/2 black and green elf creature token. Super cool, because this is going to trade up a lot of times, right? And then give you a body back. I think this is a really cool removal spell. It does require you to have a creature that is going to actually get killed. But I think that this is a really cool way to be able to get rid of a bigger creature they have because of the Death Touch. And you also are going to gain some life here because of the life link. When that creature dies, again, you're going to create a 2/2 black and green elf creature token. So when it does die, trade it up, and then you get a body out of it, and you gained whatever life from it, 1, 2, 3 points of life. I think this is a super great combat trick. It's actually my favorite one that I've seen so far in the set. Now we have Bitter Bloom Bearer for black. Black, it is a mythic rare. We get a 1/1 fairy rogue with flash and flying. At the beginning of your upkeep, you lose 1 life and create a 1/1 blue and black fairy creature token with flying. Honestly, this is efficient and it's evasive. I really like this card. I am not certain how often you're going to be able to actually get this to go off. I do like that this has flash, right? So you can flash this in and save yourself a little bit of trouble of it not being targeted early. You flash it in their end step, even if you didn't drop, say you have this as a 2 drop, but you let your second turn pass, and then on their turn you flash it in their end step. Obviously, at their upkeep, you're going to lose a life, but you're also going to gain another 1/1 blue and black fairy creature token. Huge fan of this card. I think it's going to be pretty good, both in limited formats and in constructed. Then we have a Bogart Prankster for 1 and a black. We get a 1/3 Goblin Warrior. Whenever you attack, target attacking goblin you control gets +1/+0 until end of turn. Again, goblins are back in red and black, especially. And so getting to use this ability here, it's not going to be hard to target another goblin that you have. It's not the best 2 drop. I definitely would prefer the bearer over the prankster, but it's a pretty decent 2 drop with a 1/3 and being able to pump another goblin that's attacking. Creekwood Safe Right for 1 and a black. We get a 5/5 elf warrior. This creature enters with 3 -1/-1 counters on it. At the beginning of your end step, if there is an elf card in your graveyard and this creature has a -1/-1 counter on it, remove a -1/-1 counter from this creature. Obviously, having a 5/5 come in as a 2/2 4/2 seems pretty solid, especially considering you're probably running elves and green black is kind of the elf archetype for this set. So I don't see much problem getting those -1/-1 counters off. So you are at least getting a body that actually just matches itself, right? Now you are getting to remove 1 counter at your end step, because if there is an elf card in your graveyard, so you only get to move 1 per end step. But again, like I said earlier, there are ways to get -1/-1 counters off of it. And obviously, if you can have any way to add +1/+1 counters, the way that counters work, they just negate each other. So a +1/+1 counter will get rid of a -1/-1 counter. So being able to build this up early and let it keep going, pretty solid card. Then we have Iron Shield Elf for 1 and a black. We get a 3/1 elf warrior with discard a card. This creature gains indestructible until end of turn. Tap it. Damage and effects that say destroy, don't destroy it. If its toughness is 0 or less, it still dies. I think this card's pretty decent, especially if you start looking at things that want cards to be in your graveyard, like the Safe Right wanted. It wanted for elf cards to be in the graveyard, so you could discard an elf and allow for Safe Right to get a -1/-1 counter off at the end step. I also think it's important that you can do this whenever. So if they want to target this, you can discard that card, and then you'll have to tap it. But I don't think you're going to care if you're just wanting it to stick around. Next up, we have Scarblade Scout. For 1 and a black, we get a 2/2 Elf Scout with lifelink, and when this creature enters, mill 2 cards. Again, I think this is a pretty solid card. You're wanting things to be in your graveyard, especially like that previous elf. You're wanting for elves to be in the graveyard, and this can help you do that. I think that this is a solid card. You're getting lifelink out of it, so 2/2 for 2 with lifelink and the ability to stock up your graveyard for other cards. I think this is a solid rated 1 drop. Honestly, it's overrated for me, and by overrated, I don't mean like it's not a good card. I'm meaning that we're getting more for than the mana that we're paying for it. Auntie's Sentence. For 1 and a black, we get a sorcery, and we get to choose one of the effects. Target opponent reveals their hand. You choose a non-land permanent card from it. That player discards that card. And then we have target creature gets -2/-2 until end of turn. I like the card. The downside is it is a sorcery, but being able to, if you don't have much else to do, being able to see the opponent's hand and take pretty much anything from it, because you just can't take a land, is valid. And then a -2/-2 is going to kill most things at this stage. Super great card. I actually like it. I don't think it's the most amazing card in the world, but it can act as removal. It can act as a disruption to your opponent. Think it's better. I think it's a good card. Then we have a Bog Slither's Embrace for 1 and a black. We get a sorcery as an additional cost to cast a spell, blight 1, or pay an additional 3. To blight again, you'll put a -1/-1 counter on a creature you control. Exile target creature. I think this is worth it. I don't think it's worth it if you have to pay the 5, unless you just are in game and you don't want something to have a -1/-1 on it, and you have the ability to do a mana sink. That's fine. But I think most of the time, probably 95, 96% of the time, you're really just going to want to blight 1 here and be able to exile a target creature. I think other than that, it's a fairly decent removal spell. We've already seen some pretty cool synergies with being able to remove things, putting some -1/-1 counters to kill one of our creatures, to kill another power 2 or less creature. I think this is a super cool removal spell. Barbed Bloodletter, 1 and a black. We get an artifact equipment with flash. When this equipment enters, attach it to target creature you control. That creature gains Wither until end of turn. It deals damage to creatures in the form of -1/-1 counters, so they stick around, which is kind of cool. Equipped creature gets +1/+2, and to equip it, we pay 2. This is really cool. Just, they want to chump, block with a really big creature, block your little 2/2, they block with a 4/4, a 5/5. Well, the cool thing is because this deals in Wither, now their 4/4 just became a 1 whatever, right? So you're really starting to be able to give lasting effects to your creatures that might be a little bit smaller than others. And as we've seen so far, a lot of our creatures in black are going to be a little bit smaller. And so being able to have Wither kind of leave behind this effect is super cool. And considering that once that creature dies, you can just equip it to another creature for 2. So it's going to stick around. You're going to have some ability here to keep shrinking down larger creatures with your smaller ones. Yes, you'll lose a few smaller creatures in the meantime, but it's better than just losing them every turn and you've not have any way to shrink down that big creature. Then we have Unbury for 1 and a black. We get an instant and we get to choose one of the effects. Return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand, or return 2 target creature cards that share a creature type from your graveyard to your hand. Again, this is super great, and I think most of the time you're going to wind up using that second ability, right? Because if you're playing in black, you're probably playing goblins or elves, depending on the color combination you're playing in. And at that point, whether you're black-green or black-red, right? And at that point, if you can target 2 elves or 2 goblins here, this is a super great value for 2, being able to do this instantly. So you can do this at any time you have priority. I think this is a super great card, especially for you to replenish your hand, to be able to put some things back on the battlefield for yourself. Next up, we have Gnarlbark Elm. For 2 and a black, we get a 3/4 Treefolk Warlock. This creature enters with 2 -1/-1 counters on it. So we're paying 3 to get a 1/2. And we can pay 2 and a black to remove 2 counters from this creature. Target creature gets -2/-2 until end of turn. Activate only as a sorcery. So we get some form of a removal here if we can target something smaller. And we can also help shrink something down going into a combat if we're worried about something taking us out. It is important. Remember, this can only be activated as a sorcery, so don't get caught up trying to swing in and then trying to do this as an instant mid-combat. You're not going to be able to do that, so keep that in mind. Then we have Heirloom Auntie for 2 and a black. We get a 4/4 Goblin Warlock. This creature enters with 2 -1/-1 counters on it. Whenever another creature you control dies, surveil 1, then remove a -1/-1 counter from this creature. Like the previous creature we discussed, this one does care how many actually happen, because it's whenever another creature you control dies. So if you have 2 die, you can surveil 1, let the other one die, surveil 1, then remove a -1/-1 counter from this creature for each of the creatures that died. So you are getting your 4/4 back pretty much instantly if you can play this before combat and then have 2 creatures die. So 4/4 for 3, pretty solid value here. I'm pretty happy with this. And you can still keep the surveil as you keep going. So really cool way to just be able to filter and fill up your graveyard if you're into that sort of thing. Now we're looking at Black's transform creature in Grub Storied Matriarch. 2 and a black, we get a 2/1 legendary Goblin Warlock with Menace. And whenever this creature enters or transforms into Grub Storied Matriarch, return up to 1 target Goblin spell from your graveyard to your hand, giving us some recursion. Super great. And at the beginning of your first main phase, you may pay 1 red if you do transform Grub. If you pay the 1 red and you transform, you get Grub Notorious Auntie, and you get it's a Goblin Warrior instead of the Goblin Warlock, and it gains Menace still. Whenever Grub attacks, you may Blight 1. If you do, create a tapped and attacking token that's a copy of the blighted creature, except it has, at the beginning of the end step, sacrifice this token. At the beginning of your first main phase, you may pay 1 black. If you do, transform Grub. I think this card is pretty solid. I think it falls into a lot of the traps that a lot of the other transform cards do. Is that, are they going to let it stick around? I think that that's okay. It does have a small body, so it dies to pretty much everything. So I don't know how often you're going to want to be swinging in with this if there's a body to block it, if you're wanting to get the value off the creatures. I think it does provide, once if you can flip it to the backside, I think you're getting some pretty good value. If you are willing to attack with Grub. But like I said, you're probably just going to lose Grub at that point unless you have some combat trick or something stocked up ready to go. Moonglove Extractor. For 2 and a black, we get a 2/1 Elf Warlock. Whenever this creature attacks, you draw a card and you lose 1 life. I think that this is an okay card. I would not be super excited to play it. I think that if you got the elf synergies going on, I think it's a card that you could play in order to actually be able to get some card draw, and you're going to lose a life. But realistically, you're probably going to get to use this once. They're probably just going to block this, kill it, and then you're kind of out of it. You paid 3 for a 2/1 to draw 1 card that you didn't even get the damage to go through. So it's okay. It'll let you draw a card probably 50-ish% of the time, but it's probably going to be a target to just be blocked because it can be chumped with everything, especially like Kithkins and green white. They're just going to chump block this with one of their Kithkin tokens, kill it off, let you lose your 1 life, right? Because the Kithkin token basically would have only dealt with 1 most likely anyways. So you're going to lose 1 life, draw a card, but you lost your creature. So it's okay. I think that there are better ways to draw cards for sure. We have Wretched Wrench. For 2 and a black, we get a 4/2 Goblin. When this creature dies, if it had a -1/-1 counter on it, return it to the battlefield under its owner's control, and it loses all abilities. So super cool that if you can treat one of those blight ones onto this creature, swing in, let it die, it's going to come back as a 4/2 Goblin, and it just has no abilities, right? So you just have a 4/2 body for 3, so you get some recursion there. I like the card. I think that of 3 drops, I would rather play the Wretch over the Extractor almost in all cases, unless I just have that elf synergies going and I have ways to help protect it, make it grow, things like that. But I think even then the Wretch is a little bit better. Next up, we have Taster of Wares. 2 and a black, we get a 3/2 Goblin Warlock. When this creature enters, target opponent reveals X cards from their hand, where X is the number of goblins you control. Again, super valuable because you're probably running quite a few goblins if you're playing this, because you're probably going to pair black and red together. Tons of goblins available. I mean, even if you hit them for 3 or 4, this could be something that actually, can cause some real issues for an opponent, especially if you start getting to where you have 5, 6, 7 goblins on the field. You can really cause some problems. And you can choose one of those cards. That player exiles it. If an instant or sorcery card is exiled this way, you may cast it for as long as you control this creature, and mana of any type can be spent to cast the spell. I'm a huge fan of this card. Just being able to see their hand, steal something, be able to cast if it's an instant or sorcery, or just get rid of a bomb that you're just worried about. Super solid. Definitely worth playing. We have Twilight Diviner, 2 and a black for a 3/3 elf cleric. When this creature enters Surveil 2, again, you can look at the two top cards of your library, and you can choose to put one or both of them or neither of them into the graveyard or back on top of the library. Whenever one or more other creatures you control enter, if they entered or were cast from a graveyard, create a token that's a copy of one of them. This ability triggers only one each turn. We already have some recursion going on, so this is a great way to get an additional trigger off of that and get an additional recursion from something you're already trying to do. I think this is super solid. If you're already in elves or have some recursion going, and you pull this, this is definitely worth playing to be able to gain an extra body. And also that Surveil 2 is important because it can help you filter out something, right? You can actually use this to put a creature into the graveyard to be able to help yourself get that if you have ways to cast them. It's really cool. It does need a little bit of work because you have to have another card that will allow you to cast something from the graveyard. But I think this is a valuable card and definitely worth playing if you're already in that, trying to get that game plan to work. Blight Rot for 2 and a black, we get an instant to put 4 -1/-1 counters on target creature. I really like this card because we can shrink something down, especially since a lot of the bigger creatures already come in with -1/-1 counters. We could probably just flat out kill a bigger creature with this. So I think in most cases it's going to function as a form of removal. At worst, it's going to shrink a big creature down for you to be able to handle it a lot easier. I like this card. I think it is playable, and I definitely would, lean towards adding this into my removal pile. Next up, we have Boggart Mischief, 2 and a black. We get a Kindred and Enchantment Goblin. Again, the Kindred just means that this does count for a goblin. So anything that says based on how many goblins you have, this will count if it's on the battlefield. When this enchantment enters, you may blight 1. If you do, create 2 plus or 2 1/1 black and red goblin creature tokens. To blight 1, obviously you're going to put a -1/-1 counter on a creature you control. Whenever a creature you control dies, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. Again, this is super worth playing if you're already in goblins and you have enough of them to kind of do this. You can target a goblin with this, especially because we have some goblins that when they die, they can destroy another creature that has power 2 or less. It's super great. And that ability to be able to gain some life while your opponent's losing life definitely can make this game plan just chip away at their life total while you swing in with goblins to chip away on the other side as well. Then we have Morn Song Aria for 1 black black. We get a legendary enchantment that players can't draw cards or gain life. At the beginning of each player's draw step, that player loses 3 life, searches their library for a card, puts it into their hand, and then shuffles. I honestly think that this card in limited is not going to be amazing. One, you're going to play this on most likely you want to drop it on turn 3 or something like that. You're going to drop it, and your opponent gets to use the ability first, which means they're going to get to go find their bomb in their card or in their deck and play that and potentially just kill you. So then you're going to come back, draw a card, lose 3 life, and you don't know what they got. So it's really hard to kind of judge this card right now. I don't think it's going to be amazing in limited. I'm willing to be wrong here, but I think that it's just not going to be that great, and it's gonna cause more problems usually than not because they're gonna go grab that bomb and you have no clue what it is, and then when it drops on the battlefield, you probably don't have a way to handle it. In constructed, I could see this potentially being useful. I know the card is at a pretty high value right now, and a lot of people are just in love with it. I'm not completely sold on it at this point, so we'll have to see how that develops. But I think in limited, it's a cool rare, but it's not. I don't see many occasions where this is going to be just amazing. Now we get Black's Champion and Champion of the Weird for 3 and a black. We get a 5/5 Goblin Berserker. As an additional cost to cast a spell, behold a goblin and exile it. So you're going to exile a goblin you control or a goblin card from your hand. You can pay 1 life to blight 2 and target opponent blights 2. Activate this only as a sorcery. So again, we kind of want counters to be on things, so we almost don't mind doing this. The pay 1 life makes it a little high, so it's going to be very situational. But I think in a lot of cases, it's going to be worth paying the 1 life and then blighting 2, especially if it will cause an opponent to kill something or shrink something down. And then when this creature leaves the battlefield, return the exiled card to its owner's hand. So if it was already in your hand, you're basically just giving it up while this card is on the battlefield. You are getting a 5/5 for 4 with the ability to pay that 1 life and blight. I think this card's pretty solid. I don't think it's amazing, but it is a playable card. Uh, if you have something better, play it. If you have something worse, play it. This. Um, then we have Dawnhand Eulogist, 3 and a black for a 3/3 elf warlock. Has menace, so it can't be blocked by one creature. It needs to have 2 or more. When this creature enters, mill 3 cards. Then, if there is an elf card in your graveyard, each opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. We've seen other cards like this that we're kind of wanting this to happen. And so having an elf, having effects that if an elf is in the graveyard, we get something. So this can help fill up some elves into the graveyard if we're really looking to do that sort of thing. The gaining 2 life and making your opponent lose the 2 life definitely is something that might be nice. So essentially treating this as a 3/3 body with menace with essentially burn, a shock to the face while you're also gaining 2 life. I think that this card is pretty good and is definitely playable. So keep an eye on it. Check your curve. Make sure that that this is fitting in. If it doesn't, check what other 4 drops might happen. But I think this card's actually a pretty solid card and worth considering. Next up, we have Dream Caesar for 3 and a black. We get a 3/2 fairy rogue with flying. When this creature enters, you may blight 1. If you do, each opponent draws or discards a card. Um, Paying 4 for a 3/2 with flying seems a little okay. It's not incredible. Definitely would want to play something else. But if we're already wanting some disruption here, wanting to play off of some blight here, I could see this definitely being played. But there is some drawbacks here. 3/2 is a little low. It's going to die to pretty much everything. There are 1-drop mana spells that'll just kill this outright, especially in constructed. Stab kills this. So you dropped 4 mana to die to a 1-drop, kill spell. That feels bad, man, in my opinion. Then we have a Grave Shifter for 3 and a black. We get a 2/2 Shapeshifter that has changeling. Again, it's every creature type. When this creature enters, you may return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. Honestly, not something I'm interested in playing unless there's just a bomb that I milled or something like that, and I really just want to have a way to potentially get it back. Outside of that, I think this card is virtually unplayable. Um, unless you that and you have ways to just pump it really big. I think outside of that, it's not something that I'm really interested in or going to want to play most of the time. Gut Splitter Gang, 3 and a black. We get a 6/6 Goblin Berserker. At the beginning of your first main phase, you may blight 2. If you don't, you lose 3 life. I think this is gonna be pretty decent. If you ever have to take the 3 life, that's going to be a feels bad man. But at the same time, blighting 2, I don't think that this is going to be something that you necessarily care to do. There are things that you want them to die. There are things that you can target with this, and it's important to remember. I've said it already, but it's important to remember that the blight 2 can target a 1/1. You're just putting the 1/1 counters on it. Same way you could put 2 +1/+1 counters on a 1/1. You can also put 2 -1/-1 counters on a 1/1. It will be overkill. It will die, and because the power or the toughness is below 0, so it will die. But you're getting a 6/6 body for 4. There is some downside. The card's pretty decent. I would play this if I was already running goblins, and especially if you want things to die and be able to take advantage of the blight. Definitely worth it. Then we have Nightmare Sower for 3 and a black. We have a 2/3 Fairy Assassin with flying and lifelink. Whenever you cast a spell during an opponent's turn, put a -1/-1 counter on up to 1 target creature. This, if you're playing Dimir, if you're playing blue-black, and you already are wanting to do things on your opponent's turn, especially with a lot of the flash things that are, flash fairies that are in blue, this is really great. You can add this up over time and actually kill some of their creatures. And so this really functions as a quasi kill spell ability card. Having the lifelink also makes this nice because you can gain 2 life each time you're swinging in with this, and the flying gives you some evasion. Again, I think both of these 4 drops are playable and definitely worth considering as you look at your curve. Next, we have Darkness Descends for 2 and a black. We get a sorcery to put 2 -1/-1 counters on each creature. I think that this is a pretty solid card because you're getting to put -1/-1 counters on each creature. Important, it does target your own, so be aware that you could board wipe yourself as well. But it's pretty decent. It could kill some things, especially in some token decks like the green white Kithkins. They have a lot of creatures that are 1/1s and 2/2s, and if they don't have any way to pump them, you pretty much can board wipe them. And we in black do have some cards that are bigger than that, and they're going to survive this, and it's definitely worth considering. Then we have Perfect Intimidation for 3 and a black. We get a sorcery, and we can choose one or both of these. We can target opponent exiles 2 cards from their hand, so they do get to choose those, but they have to exile them. And then we can remove all counters from target creature. We can choose one or both of these. This is really solid way to compare it with some of our creatures that are going to have these blight counters that are a little bit that would be significantly larger if they didn't have them. We could choose both of these, make the opponent exile 2 cards from their hand, and then remove all the counters from those big creatures. Moon Shadow is a good one here, right? The 1 drop that is a 7/7. If you can remove the counters, you can literally play this. If you drop that on turn 3, a 2 drop in that and Moon Shadow on turn 3, and then this on turn 4, you can disrupt your opponent's hand. They get to choose them, but it's still a disruption card advantage that you get because they have to give up 2 cards. And you can remove all the counters. So now you have a 7/7 on turn 4 that you're swinging in with that they thought was a 1/1, maybe a 2/2. So I think this card's definitely viable and should be considered. I don't think it's absolutely the best card ever, but I am very excited for this card. And if you draw it, it's worth considering playing, especially if black is your color. Blighted Blackthorn for 4 and a black. We get a 3/7 Treefolk Warlock. Whenever this creature enters or attacks, you may blight 2. If you do, you draw a card and lose 1 life. I'm pretty much not going to play this. It's a lot of cost. It's a 5 mana 3/7, and then I've got to blight 2 in order to draw a card and lose a life. There's a lot of cost here to do something. I could be wrong. It could work, but I don't see this being amazing or super useful in most cases. If you need a 5 drop in order to have something here, I think it will work, especially because it is a 3/7, so it's a pretty decent blocker. But I don't see tons of uses for the actual ability itself, unless you have some larger creatures that you're willing to give up to do the blight on. To blight 2 and lose 1 life, it's a lot. I'm not buying it. Then we have a Gloom Ripper for 3 black. We get a 4/4 elf assassin. Whenever this creature enters, target creature you control gets +X/+O until end of turn, and up to 1 target creature an opponent controls gets -X or -0/-X until end of turn, where X is the number of elves you control plus the number of elf cards in your graveyard. This card is a bomb, in my opinion, especially if you're already in elves, because X is the elves you control on the field and in your graveyard. And we already have seen cards that want elves to be in the graveyard. So having elves in the graveyard, and here we are again, having an elf in the graveyard, or 2 or 3, especially by the time we drop this, we probably have a couple already, and we have a couple probably on the field. So I feel like we're doing some pretty decent stuff here, right? It is boosting 1 creature of ours to be a little bit larger, so we can wipe something out. And if it goes unanswered, we're swinging in for a bunch of damage. The part that is really nice too is that we get to target one of their creatures to be able to potentially kill it. And in most cases, I think we will kill it by the time we're dropping this on turn 5. I think most of the time we're going to be killing whatever is being targeted. I think this card's good, and I think it's worth being played, especially if you're already in elves. Now, if you don't have elves, 4/4 for 5, not really interested. Find another 5 drop. Shimmer Creep For 4 and a black, we get a 3/5 elemental with menace. So it can't be blocked by by less than 2 creatures. And it has vivid. When this creature enters, each opponent loses X life, and you gain X life, where X is the number of colors among permanents you control. This is a perfect example. I would rather play this as a 5 drop over our previous Elf and Gloom Ripper. I think that in most cases, Shimmer Creep is going to just give us more value. It is a 3/5, and it's going to target our opponent for some life. Um, Again, in limited format, realistically, you're only going to hit them for 2. You're going to gain 2 because realistically, you're running a 2 color deck, but definitely worth considering. And in my opinion, it's the best of the 5 drops. I am willing to just be wrong on that, to be honest, but that is my opinion on it. Dose of Dawn Glow for 4 and a black, we get an instant. Return target creature card from graveyard to the battlefield. Then, if it isn't your main phase, Blight 2. Um, Again, it doesn't have to be the creature you just brought back, which I think is super, super important. But I see a lot of instances where this could be quite good, especially if you want something to die, or if you're wanting to bring back one of your larger creatures in order to actually do some real damage. Um, I think that this is one of the cards to watch out for if you have it. Um, really consider it. Because you're already in a color where you care about these -1/-1 counters, like you care about Blight. So definitely worth considering. I'm not going to say it's a must play, but I'm going to say that it's a heavy consider. Really think about it. Just look at the deck, look at what your Blight wants to do, and see if you can actually get value from it. Especially if you really want the Blight. But even if you're doing this in your main phase, getting to return a bomb to the battlefield that you milled prior with another elf, or that just died previously to some spell or whatever, I think that this card's going to be solid. Especially if you're milling yourself or something might have died. For 5 drop, it is a little high, but I think it's still worth considering in limited. In constructed, I'm not quite certain it's going to work. I'm not quite certain that it has a home necessarily. There's too many other ways to deal with getting things back. So I don't know about in constructed, but in limited, it's worth considering. It's worth keeping your eye on it. Then we have Bloodline Bidding for 6 black. We have a sorcery with Convoke, so your creatures can be tapped to pay for it. They can also be tapped to pay for one of that creature's colors. So that the 2 black, if you don't have it, which you should by this point, but if you don't, you can tap 2 creatures with black and their mana costs, and it will count as the black. Choose a creature type. Return all creature cards of the chosen type from your graveyard to the battlefield. Super busted, in my opinion, considering that you can use Convoke here. I This card is much better than Dawn of Dusk, Doseglow. Doseglow is definitely playable. This though, if you can have a couple of creatures on this, I realistically you're going to be casting this for 4 or 5 most of the time because you're going to have a couple of creatures by this point, and then being able to return all the creature types. So tracking what combines the majority of the creatures that will have a big impact in your graveyard, super valuable. And a lot of times it's going to be like goblin or elf or something like that you're just going to get some value when they enter, or you're going to get some value just from them being on the board. And at the very least, you're going to be able to go kind of wide with this. This is pretty much a bomb and worth playing to, and just making sure that you can get your creature type to match as many creatures as possible. Within reason. Don't destroy the ability for you to win the game or give up some synergies to do that necessarily. But in a lot of cases, your synergy is going to be built into the fact that it is a goblin or it is an elf. I mean, to be honest, if you're looking at your card and it says goblin or it says elf, yeah, that is an effect, right? Because you're getting a lot of ability out of them based on each other. And this card, this bloodline bidding, is worth um, heavily seeing if you can make this work in a deck, especially in constructed where games go a little bit longer. In in constructed, I don't think so. Not so much. I could see that maybe this card works, but I don't see a lot of places that it wants to be. A lot of decks right now, they get a little bit they're faster than this, right? Or they're bigger than this. So realistically, the creatures you're getting back aren't going to be able to compete with like Ouroboros, right? Because Ouroboros is probably huge at that point, and realistically, you're just not going to do anything with it. So they're just going to be able to block and swing in anyways. That's my opinion on this, but definitely worth considering for your limited formats. And these are the cards that I would be keeping my eye out for. The things that I think are going to really, if black is one of your colors, they're going to make the biggest impacts. The Moon Shadow having a one drop that could be a 7/7, and I think there's plenty of ways to be able to get this to actually turn on. I think it's huge. We have Bitter Bloom Bearer having a two drop Flash Flyer. Dropping this, especially if you're in Demir on their instep, and then in your upkeep you're going to lose that one life, but you're going to get a 1/1 blue and black fairy creature token with flying. Super valuable, especially flash it in. You're going to ping them for the one damage, and then you're going to get a 1/1 that could stay up as a chump or just be able to swing in the next turn. And then unbury, we're going to be able to return a creature card from the graveyard to our hand. So we have a couple of ways to do that right. We have the unbury, then we have the bloodline bidding, and the dose of dawn glow, all that are going to be able to help us use our graveyard to restock the battlefield or our hand to really just help, again, turn the game into our favor. Then we have a Bog Slither's Embrace, the 2 mana sorcery, and as an additional cost to cast a spell, you can blight one or pay three to exile a target creature. And then you have Grub, which Grub, Grub is pretty good. I don't think you're going to be able to flip it back and forth. I think Grub's going to get targeted. Having Grub be on the battlefield that can allow a target goblin card from your graveyard to be returned to your hand is valuable. Again, especially in combination with like the Bloodline Bidding, Unbury, and Dose of Dawn Glow, having ways to get cards back and be able to put them back into play, either directly or in your hand to be able to play them again. Super valuable. And then even on the backside, Grub allows you to blight one. And then as you're attacking, when Grub attacks, you can create a copy of a card that you have if you blight one. And then it will also be attacking. You'll have to sack it at the end of the turn, but you can get in some extra damage. I don't think you're going to be able to flip it back in most cases. I think people are just going to block Grub and kill Grub off. And then we have Boggart Mischief, the 3-drop Kindred enchantment for goblins over there. When this enchantment enters, you may blight one. If you do, you can create 2 1/1 black and red goblin creature tokens. Super important. I think being able to create those tokens to have some chump blockers and stuff is important. But you're also, whenever that goblin creature you control dies, right? Each opponent is going to lose one life and you're going to gain one life. Black and Lorwyn Eclipsed, it's doing exactly what we want black to do, right? It's trading efficiently, it's pressuring early, and it turns the graveyard into a resource instead of a downside. At the top end, black's mythic power is real. The headline Black Mythic aren't cute build arounds. They close games, they swing boards, and reward you for playing black the way it wants to be played. When you open one, you feel it immediately. The commons and uncommons provide us a lot of great removal and creature synergies that just really feel great and seem to mesh together, especially when we pair it with some of the other colors like red or blue. What really holds black together is consistency, though. Its commons and uncommons do carry the deck. It has a lot of removal to be able to just deal with things. And late game doesn't rely on hoping your opponent stumbles. We still have ways to handle it, ways to get things back, and ways to just shrink things down so that we can handle them. If your games feel like every trade favors you and every exchange costs your opponent more than it's costing you, that's black working as intended. Congratulations. And Lorwyn Eclipsed, black isn't trying to surprise anyone. It's trying to grind you down cleanly, efficiently, and without an apology.